All right, welcome. We're about to take a pretty wild journey inside the most complex, most incredible object we know of anywhere in the universe, your brain.
I mean, seriously, stop and think about it for a second. Right now, as you're listening to me and looking at your screen, there are billions, literally billions, of neurons firing away, creating your entire conscious experience. It's mind-boggling. So, for the next few minutes, let's take a guided tour of this amazing machine.
So where do we start? Well, we're going to start at the very bottom, in the oldest, most basic part of the brain. Think of this as the engine room, the part that keeps the lights on and keeps you alive, without you ever having to think about it.
And here it is, the brainstem. This is your body's essential life support system. You can see it right there where the spinal cord meets the skull. It houses these super important structures like the medulla, which handles your heartbeat and breathing, and the reticular formation, which is basically the on-off switch for your consciousness.
Okay, now sitting right on top of that brainstem, you've got the thalamus. The best way to think about the thalamus is like the brain's grand central station for all your senses. Pretty much everything you see, hear, and feel passes through here first, and the thalamus is like the traffic controller, directing all that information to the right destination in the higher parts of the brain.
And see that part tucked in at the back? That's the cerebellum. Its name literally means little brain, which is a pretty good way to describe it. This little guy is absolutely crucial for coordinating all your voluntary movements. Everything from just walking across the room to catching a baseball or playing an instrument. You can thank your cerebellum for making all of that happen so smoothly.
Okay, so that's the automatic stuff, the basic life support. Now let's move a little deeper and see where things get, well, emotional. We're now heading into the brain's emotional core.
This whole area is called the limbic system. It's this group of structures kind of nestled between the older, more primitive parts of the brain and the more advanced thinking parts. This is where all your raw, primal emotions and drives are generated. We're talking fear, aggression, hunger, all of it bubbles up from right here.
Now, inside this system, there are a couple of key players I want to point out. First, you see those two little almond-shaped bits? That's the amygdala. It's constantly scanning your environment for threats, and it's a huge part of how you experience fear and anger. And right below that, you have the hypothalamus, which is working to keep your body in balance and regulate all those basic drives.
Just how powerful is this system? Well, get this. The hypothalamus has what we call a reward center, and it is so incredibly potent that in some classic experiments, researchers found that rats would willingly run across a painful electrified grid just to get a tiny little jolt of stimulation in that area. That's the raw motivating power of your brain's reward system. Okay, so we've gone from survival to emotion, and now we're moving up to the star of the show, the part of the brain that takes all that input and actually builds the world you experience.
Say hello to the cerebral cortex. This is that classic, wrinkly outer layer you probably picture when you think of a brain. This, right here, is your ultimate command center. It's responsible for all your high-level thinking, your planning, your speaking, basically everything that makes you, you.
And the incredible thing is, with modern technology, we can actually watch it work in real time. These are fMRI scans, and they show brain activity. So in that top image, you can see the visual cortex just lighting up as someone looks at faces. And on the bottom, that's the auditory cortex activating in a patient who's having hallucinations. We are literally watching the brain create reality. It's amazing.
Now, the cortex does a million different things, but let's zoom in on one of the abilities that really sets us humans apart: language.
So language isn't just in one spot, it's a whole network of specialized areas working together. For instance, if you damage a spot called Broca's area, you'd struggle to actually form words and speak. But if you damage another spot, Wernicke's area, you can still speak, but you can't understand what other people are saying. It's a fascinating division of labor. All right, we've reached the final stop on our tour, and trust me, we've saved one of the most mind-bending concepts for last. The idea that inside your head, there might actually be two minds. So, as you probably know, your brain is split into two halves, two hemispheres. And while they look pretty similar, they're actually specialists. To put it simply, your left brain is usually the logical one, the one that's good with language and analysis. Your right brain, on the other hand, is more of the artist. It excels at spatial perception, recognizing faces, and processing emotion. You know what? Let's try a quick experiment so you can actually feel this for yourself. Go ahead and try this. First, rotate your dominant hand, say your right hand, clockwise. At the same time, rotate your opposite foot counterclockwise. You can probably do that pretty easily, right? Okay, now, try to rotate your dominant hand and the foot on the same side of your body in opposite directions. Suddenly, it's nearly impossible.
So what's going on there?
Why is that so hard? Well, that first task was easy because you were using both of your brain's hemispheres. One controlled your hand, the other controlled your foot, no problem. But the second task forces a single hemisphere to try and send two totally contradictory commands at the same time, spin this way and spin that way, and it just gets jammed up.
Now, this idea of two separate hemispheres gets really interesting when we look at patients who've had a procedure that actually severs the connection between the two halves, that thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum.
Here's a famous experiment. A split-brain patient stares at a dot in the middle of a screen. Then the word he, art, is flashed up, but it's split perfectly. The HE part goes only to their right hemisphere, and the ART part goes only to their left, language-controlling hemisphere.
Now remember, the two halves of their brain can't talk to each other anymore. So, when the researcher asks the patient, "What word did you see?" what do you think happens? Well, the patient says, "I saw the word art." And that makes sense because that's what their left hemisphere, the one that controls speech, saw. But then, when they're asked to point with their left hand, which is controlled by the right hemisphere, to the word they saw, they point to he.
This is just absolutely incredible when you think about it. It's like there are two separate minds living in the same head. The speaking left brain has absolutely no idea why the left hand is pointing to HE, because from its perspective, it never saw that word. Each hemisphere is living in its own separate reality.
And that brings us to the big final question. In your brain, right now, those two hemispheres are constantly chatting, creating this perfect, seamless illusion that you are just one single, unified person. But if that connection can be severed, revealing two different consciousnesses, what does that really say about the nature of you? What is the self? It's a heavy thought, but a fascinating one. Thanks for coming on this tour with me.